Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, and we are
Okay.
already live.
Thank you. Yeah, we're live. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for making the conversation more interesting. As always, we're back with another tourism clinic session, and today we're talking about carbon offsetting in tourism. For those of you that are practicing it already, we want to see how effective it is and if it's something we shouldn't even be talking about at all. As always, welcome with me, Matea. She's our tourism expert, and today she'll be taking us through carbon offsetting in tourism. Thank you so much. Over to you, Matea.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Esther, for inviting me to be with you these Mondays, Tourism Clinic. And I think your choices of topics are really up to date. So it's great to talk about these topics because that brings us all together really to the point what tourism today is about because our travelers are always the best informed clients. And that means that we need to focus on the newest on horizon as well. So for today, you gave a suggestion about the carbon offsetting. Of course, especially in tourism. And I'm very glad that you did that because I come from the city, Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia, and this city devoted its strategy for the next few years to carbon neutral society. And I'm very happy that I can first present to you generally the idea of carbon offsetting and later on, of course, what does it mean in practical life, right? So let's go first to the first presentation, and in fact the topic what actually that means, carbon offsetting, right? So sometimes it looks like very special, but on the other hand, when we talk in a practical level, I think everybody will understand it pretty quickly. So definitely this is a process, right? It's not just one action, but it's a process for us individuals, also businesses, or for the government. So, what to do in order to compensate the carbon dioxide that we are emitting
Mm.
to produce something quality so that we a kind of an exchange for what we do bad to our environment, right? And these projects are in fact investing in the reducement or the capture of equivalent amount. So that's why we talk about also the carbon neutral society. Né? So what we produce that we also then somehow compensate. That is the main point, I would say, of this, because we would like to go to, let's say, lower uh, level of the carbon pollution, but of course we cannot, right? Because we like our comfortable lives. It's very difficult to go out of comfort zone, and yet we are still trying, or we need to try, we need to do our best, no? So we need to reduce the impact of our human being activities to the climate change. Né? What is impacting? Then we need to balance our emissions. Né? And with these actions that we are taking, we help to absorb or actually prevent the further greenhouse gases that are entering our atmosphere. Né? So we are definitely combating climate change, right? Then we are meeting with those, let's say, offsetting projects. We would like to meet corporate and government targets. So I said that we have a target in our city, and we will talk about it later on. And we, as let's say, individuals or businesses, we need to meet those targets, right? We need to help to meet those targets. And then also, of course, promoting sustainability. And this is something that we are talking almost at every session. Promotion, we could say also raising the awareness, we could say also the education. And so this is a very, very important part of it. if somebody's asking why should we bother with carbon offsetting, so all these let's say factors are very important for our sustainable life here. I think that lots of us have already heard a lot of projects are included in this carbon offsetting. For example, reforestation. So, of course, forest trees are very important because they eat this carbon dioxide. So that means that this is food for them, for the so that they can produce the oxygen. So not everything is bad, right? Then we are focusing on renewable energy project. I think we talked about that already quite a few times. Methane capture, because we have a lot of it in the air and we need to capture that in order to lower its impact. And then, of course, a lot of energy efficiency initiatives are also included in these kind of projects. I think it would be great that our followers and also we do this test. It's actually a carbon footprint calculator. So maybe I can even put it in the chat. So if somebody is following us, that can make this test. Just a second. Now, later on, I will put it, okay, in the chat, and you can also comment with the followers. So there is a calculator, and each one of us can go through this calculator and can see how strong, how deep is his or her carbon footprint. Sometimes quite interesting. For example, if you are flying more than 5 hours a year, that's already not environmentally friendly. And you know what, Esther? In tourism, we are flying a lot. So maybe about that later on. But this was just one of the, let's say, points that I was like, wow, wow, how come? Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this in our comment. Then we definitely need to adopt these green practices, right? And that means that we are reducing the energy consumption, as we said. Then we drive less. You know, let's think twice before we switch on the engine or before we fly, right? So that we raise this awareness and say, hey, should I go once a week there or twice a week there? Should I drive with somebody, with a colleague? Should we share a car? And things like that, which are, of course, maybe sometimes a bit more demanding regarding the organization, but we are definitely environmental friendly. We already talked about the renewable energy sources. We are going to talk about that as well and some other sustainable practices. So we definitely need to invest in carbon offsets programs, right? So we can invest directly or that we invest in a specific local initiative or maybe even a global initiative, right? The most important is that we are aware of that and that we also invest. No? And when we buy a carbon offset, for example, that means that we are somehow also financing all these sustainable projects. So that means that if we make a negative impact, somehow maybe we can invest in something that is going to neutralize our negative impact, right? So regarding tourism, I think already the other day we talked about flying process because in tourism we are flying a lot and this is quite a negative impact. And of course, we can choose companies that are aware of that, and those companies they maybe invest more in these, let's say, improvement of the negative investment impact, and also have a look flying direct, right? This means that here, when we buy direct flights, sometimes, of course, they're a bit more expensive, but have a look. Takeoffs and landings cause the most of the emissions. You see? So if we are aware of that, then maybe the choice is much easier so that we fly as much directly as possible. Then, of course, also considering trains or buses for shorter distances. That could be quite a solution, especially if something is around us, maybe 500 kilometers. That would be around 300, 350 miles. And of course, if we do have this local transportation, like lots of times there is no possibility, but if there is something within this circle, I think it's definitely much better to take a train or bus, no? And then, of course, flying with those air companies that have a special sustainable aviation fuel. And believe it or not, they are promoting that as well. So they are raising the awareness among their passengers, among their travelers. No? About the eco certified hotels, we talked already the previous session, so that means that we don't need to talk much about that. And we also talked about our labels, so the labels that we can join. So that means that there are some labels. We want to be a part of this certification, and that means that we committed to a certain path, even though maybe that is going to be more expensive, maybe it's going to be time consuming, but this is our commitment. And the most important is that we promote that also among our customers or future customers. No? So just, making informed decisions. Here I gave some ideas. So before we already shared this calculator. So I think it would be very nice that each of us who are now already more aware of this carbon footprint, that we also do this calculator, and then we are more aware of that, and then we choose the products and services that are focusing towards that target. No? Now, advocate policy change. Yes, a lot of times people say, hey, what can I do? I only do one person, my hands are locked, and so on and so on. But still, I think there is, if we put some extra energy, I think there is possible that we change also our community, and then, of course, also that the politics change. And in a longer run, of course, it can be a bit of annoying sometimes, energy consuming from our side, time consuming, but in a long run, we do achieve those goals. No? And of course, engage in responsible tourism, but again and again and again. Educate and influence. I'm not so sure if we aware what an important impact tourism has in a general level of quality of life and awareness around us, because we don't just present our visitors our heritage, but also the way of life, and that is a part of the transformative process. So that means when they go back home, they also think about that. And I will talk about it later on when I'll present how do we do in our city, in our capital. Now, in European Union, the European Commission somehow encouraged 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. So in fact, 2030 is already in 5 years. So maybe we can prolong that for a few years, right? But there is always, a time limit in order to push us to work a bit more actively. And they decided to fix this year on 2030. And this is a kind of a mission. So it's a mission for 100 European cities that they transform their functionality towards carbon neutrality. And that is by 2030, as we said. No? So these cities are serving, because this is now already in the process, these cities are serving as a kind of an experiment and innovation hub, so that will follow, then the other European cities will follow until 2050. So what are they trying to achieve? climate neutrality. So that means by 2030. So that those cities, I'm going to list them later on, they committed to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, right, all across the sector. So it's intersectoral. So that means that it's not only in one, let's say, industry, but generally in the society. That is very important. So energy, transport, waste management, and so on. So that is then working as an innovation hub. And these cities then they produce or organize different pilot projects, and then of course they will share them with other cities. And this was adopted in 2022, so in April. So now very soon it's going to be already 3 years, right? And as I said, Ljubljana is one of these 100 cities. But if you want to read more, there is EC, that stands for European Commission, and then Europa, and then .eu. And then this European community, of course, is supporting financially, but also with knowledge, all these net zero cities. Now, let's see who these cities are. So they definitely want that like this. They definitely want that the locals are engaged. So it's nothing without locals. You can, set a policy, but if locals are not involved, of course, this has no result, or the results are not so successful. But we definitely want that something what maybe looks as a kind of utopia sooner or later becomes a reality. Now, it has to be also monitored. Remember, the other day we talked about the certification, and we said that the very important part is also the monitoring, so that you have somebody from outside who is checking how you are doing and how you are improving, and also, of course, that these processes are then, let's say, reported to the other ones. No? Have a look. Have a look. There are plenty of cities in EU. So 100, as I said. And here I put them in, let's say, dark gray color. And one among them is in brown color. And this is my hometown, Ljubljana, Ljubljana. This is the capital of Slovenia, the country where I come from. And there are two more cities from Slovenia. So Kranj, this is here, Kranj, and Velenje, Velenje. So there are three cities from Slovenia that committed, that signed the contract, that they will do everything to be an active member of this hub, right? But as I said, there are 97 more from the whole European area. So now, what does it mean? Have a look. Here we have those labels. So all these 100 cities, they got these labels. Nah? And here we have EU mission label, right? Climate neutral and smart cities. And then award 2, in our case, Ljubljana. So each city got this kind of an award. And of course, each city can promote that. And that means that it's also for them a kind of an obligation, right? When you get something like that, you are obliged to follow the path. No? Now, what do we do? So they have, first of all, of course, the place where locals, remember, the locals are important factor, where the locals can come in. That's an office, like you can see on the right-hand side. It's not just an office, it's, let's say, a kind of an invitation, information desk, where you can come in. There is always somebody who can present to you this project. Carbon neutral city 2030. And on the left-hand side, I placed a picture with lots of plants, because it's so interesting. They got an initiative that there is a shelter for plants I know for some of you maybe that could be a bit funny, but they said, okay, sometimes people cannot care of plants because they work longer hours, right? Sometimes maybe they go on a holiday or something like that, and these plants are then collected near this kind of reception desk. And then, let's say, Esther, you would like to adopt this plant, right? So you come here, then they give you information how these plants should be taken care of, right? Because lots of them need more water, some of them less water. What about nutrition and so on? So they inform you about that. And then, I mean, it can be a bit silly, but it's a dedication. Then you sign a contract that you will take care of this plant, right? So that you will act responsible. So it's maybe for some people that's quite funny, but on the other side, when you take something like that, when you sign that you will take care of it, that means it's your responsibility. So the approach is a bit different, no? What I like very much is the raising the awareness. And you know that I'm a tourist guide, so definitely we have a lot of topics, not only from the past, like from the cultural heritage, from the natural heritage, but also our daily life. So have on my LinkedIn the thought: respect the past, seize the day, create the future, right? And this is definitely a project that we create the future. So we applied for some funds on this project, and these funds were then approved by the body. And now we organize guided tours based on this topic, right? I mean, of course, we do mention also a bit of heritage and so on, but the most important is that we educate travelers. They can be from Ljubljana, that means the locals, they can be from the other parts of Slovenia, they can be also abroad, but that we take them through the city and we show them what are the projects that are encouraging, that are included in this process of carbon neutral city 2030. For example, one of the first steps was, of course, get rid of the traffic. Remember, drive less, we said. We are not talking here about flying, but we are talking here about driving a car. So on the left-hand side top, you can see there is a main route in the city, and there are still a lot of cars. But nowadays, we are shifting to this part on the right hand side, the same picture on the left top, where there are already some trees. So that means that there are some benches, there are some trees. And on that street now, you can see only local buses and delivery cars. So that means that me as a local, I'm not allowed to drive there anymore. So I should go there or by local transportation or by bicycle, or that maybe I even walk. So cycling is very much in. And on the other side, on the right hand side at the bottom, we have some bicycles, and this is one of the projects. So take a bicycle, it can be yours, but there are also some city bikes, and ride to the city center. No? Another very successful project is here presented on this picture, and these are underground waste containers. As you can see, there are some different colors. So the first one closer to us on the left-hand side is brown. This is for biodegradable. Then the next one, black, is for residual. And then I don't know how much you see, but there is also a green one, which is for glass. Then we have the yellow one for plastic and blue for paper. So definitely we need to separate all these waste. And in order somehow, because we are in the city, to get out of our sight, these containers are underground. So when the truck comes, the lid opens and then they empty the container, which is underground, on the truck. So this is another project that it's very important for the city. Waste containers separately. Somehow I would say that our city is quite blessed with greenery. Over 60% of the city is green. And on the left-hand side, for example, we have even the library in the park. So that means that the city pays, and then a certain team of, let's say, people who are involved, they bring shelves to those or parks or along the river. Then they put books, and you as a local or a visitors, because there are also some books in the foreign languages, you can take a seat, you can relax, you can read a book, you can enjoy a bit more of the oxygen, and then you can continue your, let's say, promenade, or you just stop with your dear ones, as this lady with the dog, and enjoy the nature. So this is something that we would really like to encourage people not to be so much stressed, but also to relax, to recharge in the nature. Our city is along the river. So on the left hand side, you can see there are buildings along the river, which is quite, I would say, tranquil. And that's why, believe it or not, we do city tours also by canoe. So that means we use our own energy, right, to move around and to do the city tour. So one of the most important attractions in the city, like Three Bridges, the market area, Dragon's Bridge, Butcher's Bridge, the lock in Ljubljanica, on the Ljubljanica River, all that can be seen if you do a tour by canoe. Of course, also walking. So when you want to be a carbon neutral society, then you always somehow encourage projects or sightseeing which is done by your own energy. Nah? And another thing I wanted to point out, because I think this is very important, you see here is a boat, and this is electro boat. At the moment is one, but there are going to be some more in the near future. Nah? So that could be really as much as possible neutral. Then definitely greenery, but not only parks that I mentioned before, but also these gardens, you see, so that we locals also grow our own veggies. And that means that we can be self-sufficient. So we can rent from the city these kind of lots, and then we can grow veggies. And not only that, on the left hand side there is a tiny picture. I don't know if you see, there are two men staying on the top of the bus station roof, and they are planting little plants on the top of it, so that we have also these green roofs. Nah? Maybe you've seen also in Monte Carlo, in some other places, but let's say keep as much green as possible in the city. Nah? Beekeeping is one of the things that it's very important. We have beehives in the city as well. uh, One of them are urban beehives, which means that they are on the top of the roofs, and the other ones are in the green meadow parks, like this one on the right hand side. But all that is a part of the sustainable carbon neutral society in the city, so that we live together with the nature, as, let's say, a nice puzzle, a nice picture of a puzzle. Nah? So what I wanted to say with these examples is that if we live carbon neutral society as locals, that means that also visitors can be a part of it, right? Because we tourist guides, we always share how locals live, and if we present them how we live, then of course they can be a part of it. I say, hey, let's use our own energy, let's walk, let's go by canoe, right? They say, yeah, sure, this is environmentally friendly, this is carbon neutral, let's do it. And not only that, they transform their mind setting, and then at home they act differently. For example, once I had two professors from Stuttgart, and I took them to the local farmers market, and it's like, oh, maybe we should check that at home as well. Maybe we have also such a cute farmers market. No? So, because they've seen something like that here, and they were thinking, oh, maybe I should go also on Saturday to our farmers market. Now, so it's a kind of a transforming impact of tourism. But of course, as a conclusion, I think it's very important that we definitely need to think first how to reduce the emissions, right? Carbon offsetting is first reducing the emissions. So that means that we travel responsibly, or that we as providers provide responsible product or services. let's point out, okay, whenever we prepare a program, let's point out why this is sustainable, why this is carbon neutral. Then, of course, that we support sustainable businesses, carbon neutral businesses. That means that we cooperate with those ones, right? More than with the other ones. And of course, that we always then also follow the systematic change, because, we are in the process. Every day is a new day. So I think this is very important that we are update. Well, this is it, Esther. You see, 30 minutes, it's really quickly. I hope that our followers got some ideas what they
Mm-hmm.
could do in order to run, let's say, carbon offsetting or carbon neutral business.
Mm. Fantastic. Well, over 30 minutes in. Well, so we were not able to like take a couple of comments today, but while you were talking, I had like a question, and I was also going to mention that the closing note is very powerful. Yes, carbon offsetting is great. We should offset, but then we should try to reduce first. So I think that's a very great closing note. So you mentioned something about the ability to adopt a plant in Ljubljana. And I'm wondering if you've had cases where people will adopt a tree or a plant and then the plant dies.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
maybe they have to travel or something.
yes, yes. Well, there are two situations. So let's say that you adopt the tree, right? That means that you pay a
Mm,
monthly sum, but then the city gardeners take care of it. Okay, we have a path all around the city, which is like 32 kilometers long, and you can adopt a tree, and then the city gardeners take care of it. Okay, so usually if professionals are taking care of it, there not so much happens, right? But
mm,
let's say that you adopt a plant and something
mm,
happens. I mean, if you are conscious, then you already know that something is going on, right? It doesn't die
mm.
overnight, I would say. Then you can
True.
still come back to that office that I mentioned and you can get counseling. Okay. But I think this is more about acting responsible, right?
Mm,
So,
mm,
of course, it can happen, but you
mhm,
did your best that plant would maybe survive.
mm. Fantastic. That's great. We'd have to end this session here today. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us, Mataya. I believe that we might have to address some of these questions on the group, or we'll just take it sometime next week, or we can just pass it into another session and then
Mm,
we share a bit more about carbon offsetting and then make it a
sure.
Q&A session or something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, no, sure, sure. Because maybe we opened some topics now and, also raised some questions. So I think it's always great if people send you all these questions and next time we can answer them,
Mm.
or we can just brainstorm, because this is a changing process, right?
Mhm. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you very much for invitation. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.